Okay, so, it's kind of funny when you think about it.
What's that?
Well, we're talking about oral sex, and it's something like 90% of men and women between 25 and 44 have experienced it,
All
right?
right, a pretty common experience, you could say.
Exactly, but there's still this kind of weird, almost taboo feeling about it sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like we're all doing it, but we're still kind of whispering about it in the corner. You know what I mean?
I get what you mean, and it gets even weirder when you realize there are still places out there that have actual laws against it.
No way.
Yeah, for real. Like in Indiana, they call it acts against nature. Can you believe that?
That's wild. Like something straight out of the history books?
It really makes you think about how our private lives and public perceptions can sometimes be so out of sync.
Totally. So that's what we're diving into today, the fascinating world of oral sex and all its contradictions.
Exactly. We're going to get real and explore all the juicy details based on A Man's Guide to Oral Sex.
This deep dive is for you whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting to explore this kind of intimacy.
We'll uncover the why, the how, and even the what the heck moments that might surprise you.
We're talking techniques, anatomy, communication, safety, the whole shebang, but in a way that's fun and approachable.
So let's jump right in.
All right, so first off, why all the hype with oral sex?
Well, think about it for a second.
Okay.
There are literally millions of search results online dedicated to this one act.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even the slang is crazy diverse.
Oh, yeah. From muff diving to going down, we've got a whole secret language for it.
It's almost like this forbidden pleasure that we're all obsessed with.
In a way, it reflects how we view it,
Hmm.
right? This mix of intimacy and awkwardness.
Right. So let's get back to basics. What exactly are we talking about?
Well, clinically speaking, it's pretty straightforward. Oral sex is any oral genital contact using the lips and tongue for pleasure.
Okay, so that covers a lot of ground.
It does. So we use specific terms like cunnilingus for oral stimulation of the female genitals and analingus, sometimes called rimming, for oral anal contact.
Right. So why all the fuss about cunnilingus?
Well, the guide dives into why women love it. And it's not just about feeling good.
Oh,
For many women, it's essential for reaching orgasm.
really?
Yeah, think about it. Direct stimulation of the clitoris, which is packed with thousands of nerve endings.
Makes sense.
It's the most direct route to climax for many women. Some need it to orgasm at all, while others need it to orgasm during intercourse.
Wow, so it's not just a fun extra.
Not necessarily.
Hmm.
The guide even quotes Michelle, who calls it the cream on the cake, and says she rarely climaxes without it.
So there's the physical side, and then there's the whole emotional and psychological aspect, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oral sex can evoke feelings of desire, respect, and appreciation.
It's a powerful act of intimacy for sure.
And then you've got the power dynamics at play.
Oh yeah, like who's in control?
Yeah, exactly. For the receiver, there's the vulnerability of being pleasured. And for the giver, there's a sense of satisfaction in bringing that pleasure.
Makes sense. It's funny how something so intimate can still be illegal in some places.
It is kind of wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the guide suggests that these prohibitions might actually make it more desirable.
The forbidden fruit effect.
Exactly. It shows how complex our relationship with sexuality and societal rules can be.
For sure. So how has oral sex evolved over time?
Well, it's definitely become more mainstream since the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The guide notes that it's way more common even within marriage now.
Right. So does that mean all the controversy has died down?
Not quite.
Mm-hmm.
While it's more accepted, we still see these glimpses of resistance.
Like what?
Remember that case where dictionaries were removed from classrooms for including the definition of oral sex?
Oh yeah, that's right.
That shows how, even with increased prevalence, those old attitudes can stick around.
Totally.
Uh,
And how does the media portray oral sex?
Well, it's interesting. Sometimes you see these gendered stereotypes.
Like what?
Men's media might focus on the physical act itself, detaching it from emotions, while women's media might emphasize the relationship aspect.
Like it's all about intimacy and connection.
Right. But it's important to remember these are just portrayals, and not everyone fits into those boxes.
Good point. So who's actually into oral sex?
Well, the guide delves into some interesting demographics.
Like what?
For example, women under 50 tend to be more enthusiastic about it than older generations.
Okay, that's interesting.
What else? There's a correlation between attractiveness and education level, with college-educated women being twice as likely to engage in both giving and receiving.
Huh. That's kind of surprising. Any ideas why that might be?
Well, researchers speculate it could be linked to higher expectations for sexual satisfaction, or maybe more opportunities for exploration.
Makes sense. What about ethnicity? Any differences there?
The guide mentions that white women are more likely to engage in oral sex than African American women, with Latinas somewhere in between.
Interesting. So are we the only species who enjoy this?
Apparently not. Some animals engage in oral genital stimulation, especially when the female is in heat.
Wow, that's pretty wild. So let's talk about the intimacy aspect.
Okay.
The guide talks about how, for some couples, it's a deeply personal expression of closeness.
Yeah, like a real symbol of their bond.
Exactly. While for others, it's more of a routine part of their sexual repertoire.
Right. But regardless of the emotional weight, the physical intimacy is undeniable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're literally up close and personal with your partner's most sensitive areas.
It's about as intimate as it gets. And the guide even talks about the symbolic meaning.
What do you mean?
Like it's a meeting of the mind and body, the intellect, and the primal urges.
I see. It's like breaking down those societal taboos together.
Exactly. And that mention of Napoleon suggesting cunnilingus in his love letters just shows how this fascination has been around for centuries.
That's a great historical tidbit. So the guide is pretty straightforward about the importance of oral sex.
Oh yeah, it's not shy about saying it equals hot sex.
Straight to the point.
And it makes sense. It can really make or break a sexual encounter and even impact a couple's overall sex life.
No kidding.
The Height Report even found that it signifies a special kind of acceptance and closeness for women.
That's really interesting.
It speaks to the vulnerability involved and the trust it implies.
I get it. And then there's that whole meditative quality that some people describe.
Right. It's not just a physical act for everyone. There's a mental and emotional component too.
The guide even includes a quote from Cyan, who talks about how important it was in her first sexual experience with her boyfriend.
It really highlights how significant this act can be in building intimacy and trust.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty, the anatomy.
All right, let's map out the terrain.
The guide stresses how understanding female anatomy is key for maximizing pleasure.
Makes sense. You got to know the landscape to navigate it effectively.
Exactly. So let's start with the external genitalia, what we collectively call the vulva or pudendum.
Okay, so that includes the mons pubis, which is that fatty tissue that provides cushioning during sex,
Right. Then you've got the outer lips or labia majora.
which are covered in pubic hair and contain scent glands.
Okay. And then the inner lips or labia minora.
These are super sensitive and packed with nerve endings. They also secrete sebum, which helps with lubrication,
And of course, the star of the show, the clitoris.
the epicenter of pleasure with its 8,000 nerve endings.
It's got a visible part called the glans and a hood or prepuce that covers it.
And we can't forget the urethral opening for urine.
Right. Some women find stimulation there pleasurable too.
Then you've got the vaginal opening or introitus.
And the perineum, that sensitive area between the vagina and anus.
And finally, the Bartholin's glands, which produce more lubrication during arousal.
Wow, that's a lot going on.
It is, but every part plays a role in sexual pleasure.
The guide even includes a quote from Michaela about how much she appreciates her lover exploring her vulva.
It's a beautiful example of how appreciation and attention can enhance intimacy.
So moving on to the internal anatomy, what's relevant to oral sex?
Well, you've got the vagina, which is a muscular canal that expands during arousal.
Okay.
Most of the nerve endings are concentrated in the lower third,
Got it. Then there's the cervix, the opening to the uterus.
which can be a hotspot for some, but also sensitive. So gentleness is key,
And the elusive G-spot.
also called the Grafenberg spot or female prostate. It's located on the front wall of the vagina. It's about 2 inches up, and its sensitivity varies from woman to woman.
Okay, so stimulation there can lead to intense pleasure.
Exactly. And remember those 3 O's: oral sex orgasm and oxytocin.
Oxytocin being that cuddle chemical.
Right, it's released during orgasm and promotes bonding and connection.
So what exactly happens when a woman gets aroused?
Well, we often talk about the sexual response cycle, which has 4 main phases.
Okay, let's hear it.
So first, you have desire, the initial motivation to engage in sexual activity.
Right, then what?
Then comes arousal, also known as the excitement phase.
What happens during that?
This is when the body starts gearing up for sex. You'll see things like increased breathing and heart rate, maybe even a sex flush.
Okay.
Muscle tension increases,
Yeah.
and vasocongestion kicks in, meaning more blood flow to the genitals.
So everything starts swelling.
Exactly. The vagina starts to lubricate, the clitoris becomes engorged, and the labia get firmer.
Wow, so the body is really preparing.
It is. Then we move into the plateau phase where arousal continues to build.
Okay, so things are getting more intense.
Right. And finally, we reach orgasm, the peak of sexual excitement.
That's the money shot.
You could say that. It's characterized by rhythmic pelvic contractions and a release of tension.
And there are all sorts of ways people describe it.
Oh, yeah. Pure energy, heaven, indescribable, you name it.
But is orgasm absolutely necessary for satisfaction?
Not necessarily. Many people find sexual activity enjoyable even without climax.
That's good to know. And what about female ejaculation?
Sometimes called squirting. It's
Yeah.
a fluid that can be released during orgasm, often with G-spot stimulation.
Interesting. So is that normal?
Absolutely. It's the
Yeah.
natural physiological response for some women.
Good to know. So after all that excitement, we have the resolution phase.
This is when the body gradually returns to its normal state.
Everything calms down.
Exactly. Heart rate and breathing slow down, the sex flush fades, and blood flow to the genitals decreases.
So the guide emphasizes that this cycle isn't always linear, especially for women.
Right. It's more of a general framework, and individual experiences can vary.
Makes sense. So let's talk about the tongue.
Often overlooked, but oh, so important.
The guide calls it a sexual organ in its own right.
And rightfully so. It's got all the qualities needed for amazing oral sex.
Like what?
Well, first off, movement. It's incredibly flexible and can apply pressure in all sorts of ways.
Right. Then there's texture. Those tiny bumps or papillae create friction.
And, of course, taste. The tongue can detect a whole range of flavors, from sweet to salty to even fatty.
Wow, a true gourmet experience.
Exactly. And it can feel both temperature and touch, making it super sensitive,
And it's naturally moist thanks to the mucous membrane.
providing that much-needed lubrication.
So it's a total sensory experience for both giver and receiver.
It is. And the guide encourages us to really tune into those subtle sensations.
Like the different textures, tastes, and temperatures.
Exactly. As Jeff puts it, being mindful of the tongue's experience makes it so much richer.
Okay, let's get to the fun part. Positions.
Time for some naked twister.
The guide calls this section Naked Twister Gets Naughty.
Love it.
And it emphasizes how different positions can enhance sensation and spice things up.
It's all about variety and finding what works for you and your partner.
Exactly. But a word of caution.
What's that?
Some of these positions might require some flexibility or athleticism, so don't push yourself too far.
Good point. Safety first.
So let's start with the classic.
The tried and true.
The receiver lies on their back, offering easy access for the giver.
Makes sense.
And there are tons of variations. You can adjust your legs, bend your knees, even have the giver sit on your chest.
A pillow under the hips can also help with the angle.
Oh yeah, good tip.
Then there's Starfish.
Sounds adventurous. It is. The receiver lies with their legs and arms spread wide open, and the giver lies diagonally.
Interesting. The guide even mentions pressing on the knees or calves.
And something about the Sanyin Shao point.
A little reflexology action never hurts.
Then there's on your knees or standing.
This one sounds more dominant.
It can be. The receiver leans against something for support, and the giver kneels.
A pillow for the giver's knees might be a good idea.
Definitely. And the guide suggests gripping the receiver's hips for better leverage.
Makes sense. There are variations where the receiver props a leg up or bends over.
Lots of options. So how about sitting?
This one seems more versatile,
It is. You can use a chair, a bed, the edge of the couch, whatever works.
and it's easier on the giver's neck.
True. The receiver sits, and the giver positions themselves accordingly.
The guide even recommends a head massage while in this position.
Ooh, that's a nice touch.
Okay, next up, face sitting.
This one gives the receiver all the control.
Exactly. They straddle the giver's chest and lean forward for direct contact. And the guide wisely suggests a two-cap signal on the thigh if the pressure gets too intense.
Safety first, always.
Variations include hovering, reversing direction, even bending the legs for support.
And the guide clarifies that this isn't the same as a pussy smother.
Good to know. Then there's from behind.
A classic rear entry position.
Great for accessing the perineum.
The receiver is usually on all fours, and the giver approaches from behind.
Hip movement by the receiver can really enhance the sensation.
And the guide suggests incorporating downward strokes for added intensity.
That's pretty hot.
Moving on to sideways.
This one seems more laid back.
It is. The receiver lies on their side, and the giver chooses their angle.
The guide debunks the hysterical arch often seen in porn.
Right. It's not natural or necessarily pleasurable.
Variations include both partners lying on their side or the receiver wrapping a leg around the giver.
Lots of ways to get comfy. Okay, how about wraparound?
This one sounds intimate.
It is. The receiver sits on the couch, and the giver sits behind them, wrapping their arms around to reach the clitoris.
Full body contact. Nice.
Then we have the plow pose.
This one's for the yoga enthusiasts.
Definitely. The receiver assumes the yoga plow pose, and the giver kneels, stands, or sits to access.
Requires a good amount of flexibility.
And the guide reminds us to pay attention to our breathing.
Don't want to pass out from all the excitement.
Next up, bottoms up.
Sounds like things are getting gravity-defying.
They are. The receiver lies with their legs over the giver's shoulders.
So their genitals are literally up in the air.
You got it. The giver uses their hands to support the receiver's bum.
A soft surface for the knees is recommended.
Absolutely. And finally, the legendary 69.
Ah, the simultaneous pleasure extravaganza.
It can be done side by side or with one partner on top.
A pillow under the bottom partner's head can help with comfort.
And there are endless variations.
Like what?
Almost 69 standing, 69 sitting, 69 kneeling, 69, a bend-over version, you name it.
It's the choose-your-own-adventure of oral sex positions.
But the guide reminds us that 69 isn't for everyone.
Some people find it more challenging than enjoyable.
Right, so don't feel pressured if it's not your thing.
Exactly. And if they need a little extra support, there's always erotic furniture and supports.
Like what?
Pillows, bolsters, sex swings, slings, even specially designed sex furniture.
They can make certain positions more accessible and comfortable.
Especially if you have any limitations in movement.
But the guide emphasizes safety here.
Of course.
Yeah.
You always want to make sure there's no strain on your muscles or joints.
And that your breathing is unrestricted.
And any restraints should be used safely and consensually.
Always.
Mm-mm.
Okay, for the adventurous couples out there,
Tell me more.
let's talk about taking your show on the road.
Oral sex outside the bedroom.
You got it. The guide encourages exploring different locations.
But there's some things to consider, right?
Definitely. Like how to comfortably access the genitals, the depth and angle needed, the available space, overall comfort, any props you might use.
And of course, the fantasy element.
Exactly. The guide's main advice. Just try it and don't forget the foreplay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about some common issues and how to address them.
Troubleshooting time.
Exactly. So what are some common mistakes people make?
Well, the guide points out things like not mixing it up enough.
Sticking to the same old routine.
Exactly. It's important to recognize that everyone's different and preferences can change.
Right. And forgetting about those other erogenous zones.
It's not all about the genitals.
Exactly. There are plenty of other pleasure points to explore.
And not being sensitive to clitoral stimulation.
It can be super sensitive?
Right. So start slow and gentle and communicate with your partner.
Definitely. Another common mistake is not being present in the moment.
Letting your mind wander.
Exactly. It's important to be fully engaged in the experience.
And of course, the dreaded death grip.
Oh yeah, when the receiver grabs the giver's head too tightly.
The guide quotes Malcolm, who says, "It's flattering, but it hurts."
Poor Malcolm. So how do you deal with the need to breathe?
Well, there are a few tricks. The guide suggests tilting your head, breathing through your nose, or using your fingers to create some space.
Those are good for a quick fix.
And for the advanced folks, there's circular breathing.
Isn't that a technique musicians use?
It is. It allows you to maintain continuous airflow.
Sounds complicated.
It takes practice. The guide even suggests checking out music instruction resources for guidance.
Wow, dedicated.
And if all else fails, a good yawn can help to relax those throat muscles.
Just maybe warn your partner before you do.
So what about some common concerns for both men and women?
Like what?
Well, there's the self-doubt. Am I doing this right?
We've all been there.
And those guilty blocks, feeling unworthy of affection.
For those deeper issues, the guide recommends sex therapy.
It's always a good idea to seek professional help if you're struggling.
Absolutely. And it's important to avoid oral sex when you're sick, drunk, or high.
Not the best time for intimacy.
Definitely. Then there's the issue of jaw and tongue fatigue.
It's a real thing.
The guide suggests jaw-strengthening exercises, varying the tongue techniques, pacing yourself, and incorporating fingers for stimulation.
There's even a product called Head Candy that can help.
Interesting. And for those who might feel hesitant about being submissive,
The guide encourages communication, exploring mutual pleasuring like 69, and focusing on the joy of giving pleasure.
it's all about finding what feels good for both partners.
And that age-old question, is it okay to kiss after oral sex?
The guide says it's a matter of personal preference, so talk to your partner.
Good advice. So what about concerns specific to women?
Well, there's that whole good girls don't mentality.
Those lingering societal messages about female sexuality.
The guide suggests examining those beliefs and challenging them.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It can be, but it's worth it for your own sexual liberation.
What about worries about vaginal discharge?
The guide provides information on what's considered normal.
So you know what to expect.
Exactly. And if there's a sudden change in odor or appearance, it might be worth checking with a doctor.
Good point. What about oral sex during menstruation?
Again, it's a personal choice. Talk to your partner and see what you're both comfortable with.
Some people don't mind the flow, while others prefer to avoid it.
Right. And what about stubble burn?
Ouch. That can be a problem.
The guide suggests shaving or asking your partner their preference.
Simple but effective. Then there's the fear of losing bladder control.
Often a misunderstanding of female ejaculation.
The guide reassures us that it's a natural fluid often linked to G-spot stimulation.
It's nothing to be ashamed of.
And what about body image issues?
The guide stresses the importance of reassurance and focusing on what you love about your partner's body.
Everybody is beautiful in its own way.
Absolutely. For deeper inhibitions, the guide suggests building trust and intimacy in the relationship.
And if you're worried about losing control during oral sex,
Self-pep talks and focusing on the physical sensations can help.
and for psychological control issues,
Replacing negative thoughts with positive affirmations can be powerful.
the guide shares Preethi's brother's advice. Trust your body knows.
Simple but wise words. So is oral sex real sex?
Now that's a loaded question.
It is. The guide even brings up the whole Clinton Lewinsky scandal.
Wow, taking us back.
It shows how much debate there is around this topic.
So what's the answer?
Well, it depends who you ask.
How so?
Religious beliefs, personal values, cultural norms all play a role.
Right. And even the definition of sex can vary.
Exactly. Some people consider oral sex as sex, while others don't.
And the guide mentions that studies have shown different perspectives.
Like oral sex is more likely to be considered sex if it leads to orgasm or if you're the receiver.
So ultimately, it's up to each individual and couple to decide.
The key is to have an open and honest conversation with your partner about what it means to you.
Good advice. Now for a sensitive but important topic, sexual abuse.
The guide acknowledges that past trauma can have lasting impacts on sexual experiences.
It can trigger avoidance behaviors, negative feelings, and even arousal issues.
The after effects can be profound: fear, disempowerment, distress.
The guide emphasizes the importance of therapy and sexual healing.
It's about reconnecting with your body in a positive way and working through those past experiences.
It's a journey that takes time and patience.
But it's possible to reclaim your sexuality and find pleasure again.
So what about overcoming sexual aversions to oral sex?
Well, an aversion is basically an unconscious negative reaction.
Often stemming from bad experiences?
Right. The guide explains that it's a learned association.
So how do you unlearn it?
It's a process. It involves breaking those negative connections and associating sex with relaxation and safety.
So taking things slow and gradual.
Exactly. The guide suggests things like relaxation exercises, redirecting negative thoughts, and slowly introducing thoughts, and then experiences related to oral sex.
When you feel more in control.
Right. It's all about building trust and comfort.
So any tips for receiving pleasure?
Well, the guide encourages getting to know your own body.
Masturbating, exploring what feels good.
Exactly. And practicing Kegel exercises to strengthen those pelvic floor muscles.
That can enhance sensitivity.
And most importantly, being patient.
Don't focus solely on orgasm.
Enjoy the journey, the sensations, the intimacy.
And the guide reminds us that even if your partner doesn't immediately reciprocate,
Keep putting in the effort. Show them what you enjoy.
it's about creating a culture of mutual pleasure
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits.
of oral sex.
Well, beyond the obvious pleasure, there are health and relationship benefits too.
Like what?
Well, positive sexual interactions in general can reduce stress, boost your mood, improve sleep, and increase intimacy.
And oral sex is no exception.
Right, it triggers the release of those feel-good hormones like oxytocin and endorphins.
So it's good for your mind, body, and relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a fulfilling sex life is an important part of overall well-being.
Okay, let's tackle those anxieties about genital perceptions.
The appearance, smell, taste, all that good stuff.
The guide acknowledges that these worries are super common,
Even though it can feel like you're the only one.
and research has shown a link between positive genital perceptions and enjoying oral sex.
Interesting. So feeling good about your own body can actually make the experience better.
It seems so. It's about confidence and self-acceptance.
Exactly. And feeling comfortable in your own skin can make you more confident in giving pleasure too.
Makes sense. So what about all the pressure to look a certain way?
The guide warns against comparing yourself to those airbrushed images in porn.
Yeah, those are not realistic.
Not at all. Everyone's body is unique and beautiful in its own way.
And there's a huge range of what's considered normal.
The guide emphasizes that each person's genitals are a masterpiece.
I love that Shakira even talks about how vulvas are naturally asymmetrical, and that's totally okay.
It's about embracing your individuality.
So what about her look?
Well, the guide points out that perfectly symmetrical vulvas are rare,
And it mentions those vaginal resculpting procedures.
like labiaplasty and liposuction.
But it also includes a warning about the risks of these surgeries.
It's important to weigh the potential downsides before going into the knife.
Absolutely. So what about judging genitals?
Well, the guide encourages appreciating the diversity of bodies.
Instead of imposing unrealistic standards.
Exactly. It suggests seeking out educational materials that show the range of what's normal.
So you can expand your understanding and appreciation.
And it emphasizes the importance of taking the time to appreciate your partner's body.
Telling them what you like and find beautiful.
It's about building confidence and making them feel desired.
And what about pubic hair? Does it get in the way?
Well, the guide offers a few solutions.
Like what?
Combing through the hair beforehand, or incorporating hair removal into foreplay.
Makes sense. So let's talk about smell.
The elephant in the room.
The guide explains that everyone has a unique scent.
And challenges those negative messages about natural body odor.
Right. It's not always about smelling like a bouquet of flowers.
Exactly. Sometimes your partner's natural scent can be a turn-on.
And sweat can definitely intensify odor.
So the guide suggests some practical tips for minimizing unpleasant smells.
Like wearing breathable cotton underwear and loose clothing.
And avoiding excessive sugar, caffeine, and alcohol.
They can all affect your body odor.
And it's best to avoid using deodorants in the genital area.
They can irritate the sensitive skin.
If you want to freshen up, showering together can be a great form of foreplay.
I like that idea. So what about normal vaginal odor?
Well, it's often described as slightly acidic or yogurt-like.
And it can change throughout the menstrual cycle.
But a sudden foul or strong odor might indicate an infection.
So it's worth getting checked out by a doctor.
Absolutely. And the guide emphasizes the importance of proper hygiene.
But it warns against douching and using perfumed products.
They can disrupt the natural pH balance of the vagina.
So stick to mild, unscented soap.
And baby wipes, minimal pubic hair talc-free baby powder, and a light fragrance near the pubic bone are also mentioned as options.
The guide also reminds us that scent plays a role in arousal.
Our noses are powerful tools.
For analingus, basic hygiene is key.
Washing the anal region thoroughly.
And the guide briefly touches on enemas.
They can be used to flesh out the rectum.
But they don't prevent STIs.
Important to remember. Okay, let's move on to taste. The final frontier.
The guide explains that the initial taste is often salty, but can vary depending on factors like sweat and discharge.
Which can be influenced by diet.
So what you eat can actually affect the taste.
Interesting. The guide even suggests that citrus fruits might sweeten secretions.
Worth a try. And exercise can also impact taste.
So maybe a pre-oral workout?
The guide encourages tasting your own secretions to get a sense of your own flavor profile.
When in good sexual health, of course.
Of course. And ultimately, taste is subjective.
What one person finds delicious, another might not.
So communication is key.
Always. So what about being supportive?
Well, the guide emphasizes how crucial it is to be supportive of your partner's anxieties about genital perception.
Especially body image issues.
It's all about reassurance and expressing your genuine enjoyment of their body.
Making them feel comfortable and desired.
And if they need extra help,
Encourage them to seek out resources like a human sexuality course or counseling.
self-acceptance is a journey.
And sometimes you need a little guidance along the way.
All right, let's talk about the big C, communication.
It's the key to a satisfying sex life.
The guide says talking about oral sex is almost as good as doing it.
I like that.
And confident communication can really elevate the whole experience.
It's about expressing your desires, asking for what you want, and addressing any concerns.
Exactly. And healthy relationships use sex talks to resolve issues and increase pleasure.
As Ray says in the guide, these conversations can be tough, but they're so worth it.
So how do you actually talk about oral sex?
Well, the guide acknowledges that it can be awkward or uncomfortable.
Especially if you haven't done it before.
Right. But it stresses the importance of sharing your wants and any difficulties you're experiencing.
And it emphasizes mindfulness, releasing judgment, and patience.
These conversations can be vulnerable, so creating a safe and respectful space is crucial.
Totally. And the guide even lays out some rules of engagement.
Like what?
Find a time when you can talk uninterrupted.
No distractions.
Approach the conversation with sincerity and respect.
Be open and honest.
Keep the tone positive.
Focus on solutions and what you can do together.
Listen, actively ask open-ended questions, and paraphrase to make sure you understand.
It shows you're really paying attention.
If things get heated, take a break and come back to it later.
Sometimes you need to cool down before continuing,
Validate each other's feelings.
even if you don't agree with them.
Reflect on what's been said.
Take the time to process and consider different perspectives.
And express gratitude for your partner's willingness to talk.
It shows you appreciate their effort and vulnerability.
And the guide also lists some things to avoid.
Like changing the subject, dismissing your partner's fears, or acting like a know-it-all.